Hey Alex, how you doing? Welcome to the Military to Management podcast. Super excited to have you on to talk about your career and your journey. And yeah, why don't we just jump right into this? Can you tell us a little bit about your military background and what you were doing in the military?
Sure. So thanks for giving me opportunity to hang out with you and talk about my experiences. Hopefully this is something that'll inspire your audience. My background, I got a pretty unique Marine Corps story. I'm a Mustang, so I did majority of my time, I was an enlisted guy who served as an O231. That's an intelligence analyst. I was part of the intel community. And then I was a MECEP guy, so I got accepted for the MECEP program. Interestingly enough, I was the guy who showed up to my first unit with 3rd Marines out of Hawaii. And I checked into my unit. Everybody was in Australia. Showed up thinking, damn, I missed a trip to Australia. So my first step on base was to the education office. I signed up for classes and I started trying to chip away at classes, but the op tempo, of course, was a little bit not so conducive for being a full-time student on active duty. I chipped away, missed classes, still took the classes and passed, but eventually had to put that aside. I would eventually go and I did a tour to Iraq, tour to Afghanistan, and then transitioned over to United States Southern Command in Miami. At that point, I had more of an almost 9 to 5 style life, which is again uncommon. And I was able to go to school full time at night. So I was a full time active duty Marine going to school at night, full time at the local community college in Miami. And then I got accepted for the MECEP program there. So went to Florida State, got my undergrad as quickly as you can, got commissioned. And then I started an online MBA program at Florida International University, which is in Miami. And then from there, went to TBS, got to my first duty station. I was a logistics officer, which was a little bit, not the way I would have hoped my career would have played out because I was just so many years in the intel community. I really liked that kind of work. Kind of worked out for me because eventually I would make the transition off of active duty and finish my time in the reserves. Once I decided it was time for me to come off of active duty, there was a junior military officer recruiting firm that I partnered with. The Marine Corps doesn't really do a great job of advertising all of the resources to help you make the transition, especially for officers. But I started to see a lot of intelligent, capable officers making the transition out. And I was like, I guess there's a path outside of the Marines, but it takes the individual to go out and pursue that. The folks over at Cameron Brooks, who I had an absolutely spectacular experience with them, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a second, but I partnered with them. They agreed to represent me and help me with making the transition. My experience with them was so awesome. So this was around 2015, 2016 timeframe. Their business model is they've got recruiters that basically canvass the entire globe, go to all the major military installations, doing kind of like their roadshow. Their services are primarily with JMOs. So that's the term they use, junior military officers. So typically your field grade officers, lieutenant to captain. And they help those that have already expressed an interest in, coming off of active duty and have an open mind towards entering corporate America and have an open mind around kind of like geographic placement. So of course, you're able to provide, like in my case, I was more preferential to the East Coast. You give a breakdown of what types of roles you'd like to be considered for. In my case, I was heavy on general management, consulting, and corporate finance. And you start to kind of like give them some of the, they interview you, they go through your background, they really help you make the translation, which I think is part of the struggle a lot of us veterans go through at times. How do you take your successes in your military career and how do you translate that into corporate America talk? We have to disassociate ourselves with jargon and things that don't show material impact to the bottom line of a big organization. Although we have those stories, we aren't great at telling those stories. These folks help with that. They help with your resume. They help with, just interview preparation, things that, again, we don't learn that skill set, right? We are taught about boldness, leadership, courage, and getting in front of a group of people and inspiring them to do something difficult. But we forget that there's times where, although that skill set is applicable, we still have to translate it to a group of people who are not interested in military, courageous, brave acts. So we have to find a way to distill that. They help you through that process. At the time when I went through, they had essentially a career conference. I think they did 2, 3, or maybe 4 a year. One on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, and alternates. For me, it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. When you go through this process, then you're agreeing to be exclusive to them. So it means you're not applying for other jobs, talking to your old, your old CO, your old XO. You're not trying to kind of like go through the government jobs, contracting. Yeah, you're like going all in with these folks. And so then you don't have a lot of clarity as to where you're going to end up, right? So you're really putting all your eggs in that basket. And as you lead up to the week of the conference that you're going to be participating in, it usually lines up with about the 60 days of you coming off of your EAS or terminal leave, whatever it is. And the week of, they start to say, hey, these are the companies that we think you have the best match with. And these are the types of roles. They're doing like this. They got all the jobs listed because all these client companies come knowing that they're seeking military talent. Up until the last day, they're deciding, are you going to be a better fit for this company, this company? And the weekend you arrive, you get handed a packet and it's like, here's the list of the companies and the roles. So you don't even know which company, you don't know what role, you don't know the salary ranges. I mean, you're really kind of banking on these people putting on a great event. So then first couple of days is company briefs. Then it's, just some additional interview prep. And then the next 2 days are literally a speed dating of interviews, 45-minute interviews in hotel rooms, which is super bizarre. And it's so well run that they're knocking on the door when there's 15 minutes left. You're done with the interview. There's no time to go over because you got 15 minutes to make it to the next interview. So in my case, over those 2 days, I was fortunate enough. Again, where else can you put yourself in front of decision makers in such a well put together, high intent of hiring type of scenario? I was able to interview with 13 companies in 2 days. That's amazing. When you think about what does life outside of the military look like, if you think, especially in this day and age, that you're just going to post your resume all over LinkedIn or different job boards and you're going to have people screaming for you because you were the, motivated company commander somewhere, it's not going to happen, right? It's very unlikely that that's going to happen. So this setting and this venue is such an amazing opportunity to put you in front of awesome companies. They're typically in the Fortune 1000. So excellent companies, not some startup, not some, local company. These are multinational companies in some cases. And you're getting put in mid-level management roles, right? So you're starting in a good salary, great benefits. I mean, my experience, I felt like a high school kid being recruited for, like a college athlete, being flown all over the country. Of the 13 companies I interviewed for, 12 wanted me to go to the next round. So they flew me all over the country, picking me up in limousines, black sedans. I felt like a superstar. It was incredible. I'm such a huge proponent of this company and what they offer. The unfortunate reality is now it's kind of moved to a little bit more remote, which is just, life after COVID. But the results they're able to achieve are still the same. They're placing top-tier talented military officers into top-tier companies and setting you up for success in corporate America in a way that is unmatched. I don't know of another company that puts people in that type of position. So I'm a huge advocate for it. It changed my life. It set me on an amazing post-military career. The job that I chose, I was very blessed to have options to choose where I wanted to go. I chose DaVita, which is one of the top healthcare companies. It's a Fortune 200 company, 8 billion in revenue. Its traditional recruiting tactics are to go out and recruit from the top 10 business schools. So I always joke because all my peers were MBAs from Harvard, Wharton, Stanford. And I'm like, how did I get in here? I'm just this jarhead Marine. How did I sneak in? But I think they valued some diversity in their hiring to make sure that they had some military talent in their ranks as well. I was very fortunate, blessed, and thankful to get into this company because it set me on this trajectory for a career in healthcare management that I think had an amazing starting point. In fact, I get approached by recruiters all the time. And I'll joke with them and say, I know what your starting point was. It wasn't the Marines, it was DaVita. And they laugh and they agree because it is a company that has been considered the gold standard for multi-site healthcare operations, multi-site in general. And you've seen a lot of DaVita alumni go on to be successful in the different Fortune 1000 companies and, to VP, SVP, and even C-suite ranks. So I'm super thankful for it. It has helped me turn that into a pretty good seasoned. I've had several different roles since leaving DeVito, which have all just been kind of complementary to one another. And it kind of helped me with my evolution as an executive. I encourage.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you talked about that because there are obviously a lot of different options when you're getting out of the military. I didn't do something similar to that. I just went with one of the other military recruiters that just shotguns jobs at you. And your experience sounds way better and has worked out fantastic for you. So glad that you shared that as an option for people who are getting out.
Yeah.
What are a couple of your key values or leadership experiences from the Marines that you've carried over and helped you in your transition into corporate?
I think the one that has certainly served me well in all aspects of my life, and the Marine Corps really helped create more awareness to that, is just your confidence, right? We as especially Marine officers, and I would believe this has got to be true because I've worked in the joint world too, like all veterans have a level of confidence that probably surpasses their civilian peers. Officers, I think, another layer on top of that. But I think that confidence to get in front of a group when there's a problem and be able to get in and say, I'm not an expert. As officers, we're often given assignments that don't align with our expertise. You take a Marine who does 3 years in the infantry, and then you send him to go into recruiting, right? It's in our DNA to constantly be sent to different assignments. Even when you were in the infantry, and I was not an infantry officer, I was a Lago. But even as a Lago, you're expected to be an armory officer, a battalion logistics officer, and a motor transport platoon commander. So even in your 3-year stint, you're given multiple roles and you thrive. Why? Because you've been given an assignment and the confidence to complete and thrive in that assignment. When you get out to corporate America, it blows people's mind away how diverse and nimble we can be, right? We are extremely nimble, extremely confident. We set our ego aside when we say, I can lead people who are experts because I know how to lead and see a project go from inception to execution. It's confidence, nimbleness in our leadership style, and just solving complex problems. That's what makes our brand as officers so strong, because we've led through complex problems.
Yeah, that's something you can't really, that doesn't get taught on the civilian side of things. It comes innate to, officers and, people coming out of the military. So that's very, very insightful. I agree with you. I always look to try to bring on military officers myself for the companies that I'm running. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now. What's your role now? What's a week like? What's a day like? Tell us about it.
Sure. And let me finish that one thought too. I want to make sure I don't want to sound like I have a bias towards officers. I spent more time as an enlisted man than I did as an officer. So I passed down my car, they go buy another one. And the owner of the dealership was like, oh, we always try to hire veterans because you guys just get stuff done. And I'm like, that's true. It's very true. It's true whether you're enlisted or officer. In my current role, I am the chief operating officer of a private medical practice. I have been in roles in the Fortune 500, private equity-backed healthcare roles, and now I'm in private practice. Every day is different for me. My job is, of course, to the range of general management responsibilities, which are profit and loss management, ensuring that our business is set up for growth, clinical outcomes, because I'm in a clinical environment. We want to make sure we provide good clinical outcomes to our patients. And I do that through empowering clinicians. I'm not a clinician. I don't have any medical background, but I support by ensuring they have the latest technology, resources, support, and the right staff to provide the best outcomes for our patients. I'm responsible for business development, finding new sources of revenue through referral sources, bringing on new doctors to do surgeries at our surgery centers. It's a very diverse, and of course, HR stuff, team, morale, culture, all that is part of my purview. So there is no day that's the same for me. I'm fortunate, and I think it aligns with my professional DNA that there's no monotony. Every day is a little bit different. Some days can be smoother than others. I would say to you, one of the biggest emphasis for me is to empower people, right? I want to push down and delegate to the lowest level and stay as far away from the minutia as I can. That doesn't mean I'm ignorant to the fact that it exists, but I don't want to get in the way of allowing another person to showcase their leadership ability if I can by pushing stuff down and delegating.
Love that. Good military leadership principle there as well that you're applying in civilian life. That's great. So healthcare technology, you're talking about giving the doctors the latest technology. Are there any big trends that you're seeing in the industry currently? Obviously, everybody's talking about AI right now. How are you guys using AI? Are there any other trends of note in the industry?
Sure. Technology in terms of like the delivery of care, that's constantly evolving. That's, hey, this device provides us a certain outcome that hadn't historically been. So there's always that. But to your question specifically about AI, I think where you're seeing healthcare in general racing to adopt the best practices in terms of utilizing AI, it's shortening the time to diagnose a patient, having the most pinpoint accuracy on what this diagnosis could be, what's the preventative care, what are the interventions required. Ultimately, AI is going to replace some of the very manual analog ways of doing things. It's not going to eliminate positions at large, but it is going to eliminate wasteful uses of human capital. And what I mean is there are times where you're relying on, in the healthcare setting, let's just say, and I'll use the example of a hospital. I don't oversee hospitals, but in the case of a hospital, think of the tired nurse who's on the 7th day straight on the 11th hour of a 12-hour shift. Is this person providing capables? I mean, physically, are they physically? And this is no knock to our healthcare providers. What they are expected to do is an incredible task. But are they providing the best care to that patient at that moment? That patient doesn't know that that nurse is at the 11th hour on the 7th day. So what are these AI tools going to do? They're going to help that person basically remove emotion from that. They're going to remove exhaustion from that. They're going to remove somebody's questionable thought process in the diagnosis and assessment of a patient, because the AI triggers are going to help supplement that, right? So I think that's what you're going to see in the healthcare space, is taking out of the equation the very human aspects of exhaustion, inefficiencies, opinions versus fact, opinions versus clinical research that can result in less than optimal patient.
Is that type of stuff already happening? Is it beginning to happen? Where are we at that? When am I going to have an AI robot doctor?
I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
we'll
where
have that. I don't think you'll have that. There was an article recently that said, I think it was like Chat GPT got a passing score on like the medical exam or something like that. Like Chat GPT on its own passed the medical tests or med school entry exams. I don't see that, because there still needs to be a human being. All of us are different, right? As human beings, our bodies are different, our genetics are different, our histories are different. I think DNA is going to supplement human expertise. It's not going to replace it, right? AI is already being utilized. When a doctor sees a patient, there's what's called coding, and they're using CPT code. When you see a doctor and he's saying all the, perhaps the diagnoses that the observations, all that has to be dictated through a scribe, so an extra person, who then submits that through the billing department to bill Medicare, bill your insurance for every single thing that the doctor did. Well, a lot of that gets missed or misdiagnosed, improperly coded. So you're seeing inefficiencies, you're seeing claims being denied, you're seeing inefficiencies that exist because you're relying on humans. A doctor is expected to see 12 hours worth of patients in a hospital and then sit down and dictate his notes on a patient he saw 12 hours ago. AI is going to help create a better workflow for these providers. And I think what you're going to see is streamlined processes, but it's never going to take away from the doctor who looks at a patient and says, tell me about your medical history. Tell me about your parents. Tell me about your diet. Tell me about all these things. Of course, AI can kind of extrapolate the nuggets from that, but it certainly cannot take away the expertise of a trained medical professional who has experience in other areas, right?
AI is freeing the professional up to do the highest leverage thing, which is that, human to human interaction.
Correct. Yep.
Love it. So what type of KPIs are you tracking on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that are top of mind for you? Top 1, 2, maybe 3 KPIs that you're focused on.
So in healthcare, this is something I learned early on at DaVita, and I thought it was the best way to talk about the performance and health of a business in a clinical setting. I need good financial performance and I need good clinical performance. And I need them both like I need air and water, right? One can't come at the expense of the other. In order for you to have healthy economics, you have to have healthy clinical outcomes. If in order to achieve healthy clinical outcomes, that means you're running the business into the ground. That's not a healthy business. And you're going to put the other at risk, right? So there has to be balance there. I'm not a clinician, but I lead clinical teams. And often there is this preconceived notion that I don't like. I'm a capitalist. I'm all about profitability. I'm all about seeing the business thrive. But if I was solely focused on profitability and revenue and all of those business KPIs and metrics, I wouldn't be in healthcare. I'm in healthcare because I feel like I am part of an organization that serves, which is a continuation of a military service. I'm about something that has a greater purpose than myself. So that's why I stay in healthcare. So the outcomes that I'm looking at, of course, include profitability. So top line revenue, EBITDA, right? Those are basic. That exists in every single business. But the clinical outcomes, right? In some settings, depending on what your setting is, right? You're graded by Medicare and CMS, right? They have star ratings for your locations. They have, different types of ratings from the different regulatory boards that exist. So making sure you have high quality in your facilities is extremely important. So those things are very important. And how do you achieve those things? You have to have good culture, right? So it's treating your people, treating your team well, making sure they work in an environment where they want to come to work, that they're treated fairly, that their managers listen to them, that they're present, right? All those things are extremely important. Your metrics become, the 4 pillars of financial outcomes, clinical outcomes, team, and then growth. When you focus on those 4 areas, you're going to have a healthy business. The clinical outcomes and the financial outcomes, like I said, top line revenue, EBITDA, middle of P&L, how are you managing expenses? How are you reducing unnecessary expenses? How are you monitoring your staffing? I think a lot of times there is this natural tendency to think, hey, staffing, you are insensitive and you're just looking to cut hours. No, that's not true. We're just looking to eliminate inefficiencies. Inefficient staffing impacts the business and it doesn't allow the business to invest in other areas to support our desired clinical outcomes. Those are some of the areas like in the clinical space is so diverse depending on the modality and the setting. It's hard to give you specifics. I think staffing becomes one of the ones that gets the most scrutiny because you want to ensure you're staffing to your volume, right? You want to ensure that you're not, the funny thing about efficient staffing is that I can't deprogram that. I'll go into Crumble Cookie and I'll see 3 employees there and the place is empty. I'm like, oh, they're overstaffed. They got too many people here. They got to send one home. And that's what usually makes businesses fail, especially in private practices. Often there's a tendency to, well, these people have been here for so many years. We don't want to cut their hours. We'll say, well, I don't want to cut their hours either. So what can we do to grow? Growth solves all problems. If we can improve our efficiencies, if we can increase our volume, then we don't have to cut anybody's hours. But then often when you say, hey, here's some of our growth plans, is met with resistance, is met with, oh, we're already short or we're already, got enough on our plate as it is. And so it's kind of a unfortunate conundrum to find yourself in because you can't have it both ways, right?
Well said, 100% accurate. And I think that's like industry agnostic.
Yep.
You got to deal with those types of things. So appreciate you sharing. Where do you see yourself either professionally or with the businesses you run in the next 6 to 12 months from now?
I see myself, the way I answer that is I always want to see myself on this obvious trajectory where my influence and my scope is increasing and just I'm adding more value to the organization at large. It's hard for me to sit still. It's hard for me to just, take something and sit and dwell on it. I like to, see a lot of growth opportunities through whether it's different projects, different committees, different types of, I'm usually the guy that's always like, oh, there's a territory in distress. I'll go to that one and I'll fix it. I need to move around. And I think the military designed me that way. Just like what I said earlier, when you think about a 3-year stint at Camp Lejeune or Fort Bragg, you're going to do multiple assignments during that tour. So that's just kind of how I've been built. A story of my post-military career too, is that even in longer stints at different companies, my role throughout those has changed. My territory has changed. My constituency of people that report to me has changed. So I like a lot of activity. I like fast pace.
If there's one major roadblock that you could remove or something keeping you up at night about business, what is that?
One major roadblock,
problem that you could solve that would help you professionally or your business just catapult?
I'd say one of the biggest areas I struggle with is often I might oversee a group of people, and this is even true to the, as a brand new logistics officer, I take over an organization of experts, people who've been in that field for a long time, and there seems to always be this resistance or hesitancy to adopt new ways of thinking, new technologies, more efficient ways of doing things. And so I think that's the biggest challenge that I deal with. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think it requires me to be nimble because, even my time in the military, I wasn't the person who said, hey, because of my rank, you have to listen to me. I was a person who liked to get buy-in and get people to feel like they're involved in the decision-making process. So I do feel like that's always a very cumbersome process at times, but that's the burden of being in leadership, right? That's the burden of command, like we used to say in the Marines. And that's one that I think will never go away. Sometimes it can be draining. Sometimes it can be exhausting, admittedly, right? I hate to admit that, but I think that's probably something we don't openly share enough. It can be draining when you know the very obvious solution or the obvious answer and you're met with resistance, whether it's technology, way of doing things. And sometimes secretly these people, it's job protection, right? It's self-preservation. I get it. And I think there's an inability to grasp the idea that if they do well in this new way of doing things, that doesn't mean their position is going to be eliminated. That means they've now found a way to focus on more important stuff, right? So I think that's usually the biggest burden or drag that I deal with.
People hate change.
Yeah.
That is industry agnostic as well. The military definitely prepares you for that, like building consensus and things like that. I appreciate you talking about that. I feel the same way. But when you do it a couple different times and you get results, but then you're on a new group that doesn't have the context of the past results, and that is definitely draining. So to wrap it up, do you have any advice for people who are maybe thinking about getting out of the military, or maybe they just got out of the military and are starting their career? Tell us a little bit that. If you could give them, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Sure. If I can, I'm going to give a few.
Give a few,
All
man.
right, I will give a few. Number one, get an education. There's no doubt that the data, and by the way, I'm not knocking all the trades that don't require that. Get your education and use your VA benefits to the max. I'll share with you, I went to Florida State, had to use the GI Bill, but I already had an associate's through tuition assistance while on active duty. And so use your GI Bill, use those benefits. I used the GI Bill to get a master's. Go to the best school possible. Don't settle for the military academy college of San Francisco or whatever. They get these online colleges coming out of the woodworks that are trying to entice and recruit military folks. Go to the best school available because the GI Bill is going to pay for you. Go to Harvard. Apply to Harvard. Apply to every Ivy League school you can, because if you don't get accepted, your state school is fine, but go to the best school possible because there's something about the prestige. Just like the brand of the military is so strong, the brand of some of these schools is extremely strong, and it gives you just a slight edge in some cases or a huge edge. But I think a lot of times, this is something I've learned from many of my peers, both enlisted and officer, is they try to go the most expedient, efficient way. And as a result, they don't get the best outcome because they settled for a less than stellar school. So go to the best school you can because you've never had the opportunity for somebody to pay the bill for you to go to a top tier school. So I encourage people to do that. Number one. Number two is pay for somebody to do your resume. At ChatGPT, of course, you can do ChatGPT. Do not, I'm telling you 100%, do not rely on the people on base to do your resume. They've never left the base. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk when I say this, but I'm super passionate about this. Do not rely on the people who work on base to do your resume if you're looking to get off base. Pay a professional. Doesn't matter what it costs. Pay professionals to give you the best resume possible to help you land the best job possible. So that's number two. But those are the two biggest ones. Pay somebody to do your resume. Pay somebody to, utilize your GI Bill to the max. And there's other veteran resources that exist for different skills or trades, but utilize your benefits to the max. I used all my post 9/11 GI Bill, and now I just got a letter saying I might be eligible for another 12 months of Montgomery GI Bill. Use it. I used my post 9/11 for my undergrad, my MBA, and because of insecurities of being surrounded by all these Harvard MBAs at DaVita, I went to an executive program at Columbia University, the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton Business School, and Yale. All paid for. I didn't pay $1. Like, the programs are in the tens of thousands of dollars. I didn't pay one penny for them. I have a resume that includes an Ivy League executive education. So huge proponent of that. There's all types of programs that help you, whether it's in public speaking, whether it's in, all types of different programs that are going to help you. Executive presence. They all accept the GI Bill. Why wouldn't they want to take your money? Highly encourage people to use that. Highly encourage the coaching. Highly encourage that Cameron Brooks process that I talked about in the beginning here. They were just a top-notch organization. So I encourage people to explore that. That's exclusive to officers, of course, but I definitely encourage people to. And here's what I'll tell you too. As you're considering tail end of your career, don't forget that your XO, your battalion commander, they do not care about your post-military career. They're not going to be the person who's going to put you into Fortune 500 company. Never done it. And this is not a knock on the old CEOs. I love my Marine Corps experience, but nobody in the Marine Corps is going to prepare me for life outside of the Marine Corps because they had not left. It's like, don't ask somebody that's broke about financial advice. You got to ask somebody who's already done it. And that's why I love that you're doing this podcast, because you're going to help people break out of, hey, my company gunny, he told me I should do this. I literally had a person I was trying to mentor, and I said to him, go pay. I paid $800 for my resume to get done. And you might be saying, well, that's crazy. I'm not going to pay that. Well, I make a ton of money now. And I'm not trying to sound like an asshole when I say that, excuse my French, but you're going to get what you pay for, right?
Good return on investment.
And so I was trying to tell an old Marine buddy of mine as he was making that transition. That's why I use the example of the person on base. I said, brother, pay somebody to make you a top-notch resume. He says, oh, well, there's the lady on base. I said, that lady's never left base. That person has been traveling the country with their significant other from base to base to base. They never made them meet. So don't rely on those resources. Use that as a starting point. Go seek professional advice.
I want to just jump on one thing, and then I'll let you finish. Like, applying to the best school possible. That is amazing advice. Everybody should do that, especially the top programs, like top MBA programs or just top undergrad programs in general. A lot of times people getting out of the military don't know this, but you're only competing against other veterans, other military people. So you might not think you're the smartest tech person or whatever applying for a Harvard MBA, but the Marines are all going against the Marines. Yep. And the Army are all going against the Army, and they have slots already designated for veterans. So great advice on applying to try to get to the best school possible, because it does, the return on investment is just higher.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're spot on. And I think we're often, we're humble warriors and we don't want to, but this is your chance to shoot for the stars, right? This is your chance to shoot for the stars. Go pay for that resume. Go to the best school possible. That what other organization is going to give you in return for your service the opportunity to go out and get a top tier education, and they're going to pay you a housing allowance. And, of course, depending on what, everybody's in different eras of where they join and different, benefits that they're eligible for. But for the most part, if you spend some time on active duty, you've got GI Bill benefits. Use them. I encourage everybody to go out and use them. That's my biggest parting shot. Get to the best school possible, pay somebody to do your resume, and don't solely rely on the base resources, because that's not always the best option for people.
I agree with you. Sound advice. I hope everybody listens. So, Alex, if people want to find you, look you up, how do they do it?
You can find me on LinkedIn professionally. My LinkedIn is Alex/Delgado1123. And I'm on Instagram at Alex R. Delgado. That's probably the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on. Appreciate your wisdom. It's been fun chatting with you, man.
Likewise, yeah.
And appreciate your time.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody goes to Harvard.
Hopefully.
All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Talk soon.